That morning, when I opened the safe to look for the only thing left for my wife, a silver heart-shaped pendant, I realized it was gone. And my daughter's answer is something I will never forget. "I sold it, Dad. Use the money for Maui. Don't make a big deal out of it." The whole room exploded in my head, not because the pendant was missing, but because the boundary of respect had just been sold for $800. From that moment, I understood that some battles don't need guns or knives. They only need a forged signature, and a father still sane enough not to stay silent forever. If you've ever been looked down on by your own family, if you've ever seen your kindness treated like a clearance item, then stay until the end of this story. Because sometimes justice doesn't begin in a courtroom. It begins the moment you say, "Enough." If you still believe gratitude is the foundation of every family, and that silence can become the strongest voice when paired with decency, leave a single dot in the comments, so I'll know you still stand with those who choose truth over pretense. And don't forget to hit subscribe, because every week I'll tell you another true story where those who seemed weak taught the world one thing. Mornings at Redwood Station always start with two smells: thin gasoline and sea mist. I flipped the main switch behind the counter. The fluorescent light flickered once before glowing, revealing floor tiles worn smooth by mechanic boots. Outside, Highway 101 stretched like a silver vein along the Pine Ridge. A passing semi left a gust of salty air. I poured coffee from the old steel pot, breathed it in, then opened the third drawer of the wooden cabinet, the one Helen had once rounded by hand, edges soft like her temperament. There should have been a small, pale blue tin box inside, holding her silver pendant, a thin heart engraved with 4 words: "To the sea." The drawer was empty. I leaned down, ran my hand across the smooth bottom, finding only fine dust and a single gray hair caught on a nail. I pulled the whole drawer out, set it on the counter, and reached into the cabinet's cavity. Nothing. I opened every drawer, the change tray, the oil receipt box. Still nothing. The hollow feeling rose from my chest to my throat, like losing footing, like someone had erased my name from the shift board. I dropped into the swivel chair, stared at the grain of the wooden desk, drew a breath, then stood abruptly and walked toward the break room behind pump number 4. I searched the locker, opened the tool chest, and even peered into the wall gap where I'd replaced an outlet last year. Nothing. I returned to the counter, looked up at the camera mounted in the corner. The recorder had been off for months because I hated tangled wires. Helen used to say, "I like our place quiet." I pressed my lips together. My hand moved by habit, lifted the mug, took a sip. The coffee was bitter, the morning cold. Laughter echoed from the back door. Amber appeared, hair tied up, holding her phone, front camera on. "Grandpa, check in. You look so serious. What's up?" She leaned over the counter, aiming the lens at my face. I turned away from the glare, speaking softly. "Have you seen the little tin box your mother kept in this drawer?" Amber pouted. "That old thing. Mom took it." She said it without looking at me, eyes locked on her screen as she adjusted the filter. Morning at Redwood. Grandpa's grumpy again. My heart skipped. "Took it where?" "Some pawn shop in Crescent. Coastal Pawn and Exchange, I think. Needed cash for Maui. Don't be dramatic, Grandpa." She winked at the camera. "Grandpa drama." Maui. I blinked several times as if a grain of dust had stuck in my eye. I walked around the counter toward the kitchen where the sound of a knife tapping echoed. Lauren stood there in a white dress, a new watch gleaming on her wrist under the fluorescent light. I stopped at the doorway. "Lauren, you're up early," she said without looking up, her tone casual, like she was talking to a delivery guy. "Where's your mother's pendant?" She looked up, eyes calm, lips curved faintly. "I sold it, Dad. Needed money for Maui. You were going to take that junk to the grave?" I froze. "What did you say?" "Come on, you wouldn't help. I had to. $800, not much, but it covered part of the trip." She wiped the knife with a paper towel, smirking. "You should thank me." At least that pendant was worth more than this rusty gas station. I took a deep breath. Lauren, that was your mother's keepsake. It's mine, Dad. Mom's gone, so what's hers belongs to the family. And in this family, I'm the one who decides, not you. Her voice was sharp as the knife on the cutting board. Who are you talking to, Lauren? To someone who lives off the past, she snapped, letting out a short, cold laugh. You keep everything like a museum and expect people to thank you? Nobody pays for nostalgia anymore, Dad. I could only stand there watching. She went on, not even pausing. You think this gas station is a legacy? It's a graveyard. Mom's dead and you're still here like a caretaker. I sold her necklace to pay for my flight. At least it helped someone live a little. You... If Mom saw how you cling like this, she'd be tired too. Holding on to an empty box and calling it love. That's funny. She smirked, then turned away as if ending a dull meeting. Outside, Amber giggled, the rustle of music coming from her phone propped somewhere on the fire extinguisher. Where are the comments, guys? Grandpa's so tense. The veins in my hand rose as I pressed my palm against the edge of the sink. The veteran in me tried to keep my tone even. Where did you take it? Coastal Pawn and Exchange, she said, wiping her hands, shrugging as if done with small talk. Got 800. I'll pay you back when I can. I looked at the white towel crumpled in her hand and thought of Helen back in the day, working in that bayfront restaurant, folding each towel neatly after wiping the counter, like tucking away one peaceful day. I turned, my feet sinking into the damp grit on the floor. Back at the counter, I picked up my phone. The fingers that usually trembled every morning were still today, steady in a strange way. I typed, Coastal Pawn and Exchange, Crescent Bay. A number appeared. I called. A man's warm, steady voice answered, Coastal Pawn and Exchange, this is Leo. Hello, Mr. Leo. I'm looking for a silver heart-shaped pendant engraved with the words, To the Sea. Sold yesterday. Are you the husband? He hesitated for a moment as if afraid to touch a bruise. I remember that piece. Handcrafted. Beautiful engraving. I'm Graham. My wife, Helen, wore it for 40 years. My daughter. I understand, he said gently. You should come now. There's something inside that pendant your daughter doesn't know about. My grip on the phone tightened until the plastic creaked. What do you mean? Hard to explain over the phone. I've kept it safe. Best to come before 6 this evening. I'll hold it for you. I nodded, though he couldn't see it. Thank you. I hung up, staring at the strip of sunlight stretching across the counter, like a horizon spilling through the front glass. Amber ran in, phone raised to my face. Grandpa, say something for the vlog. I looked at her. For a split second I saw Helen's young eyes, just as bright, but warmer. In Amber, that light was just the glow of a screen. I tilted my head so the camera frame slipped past my shoulder, reached out, and flipped the coffee machine switch off for the next cup, cleaning up what was left of the morning. I have to work, Amber, she pouted. Okay, whatever. Then darted out the door, laughing like a sparrow by the shore. I walked along the left aisle, checking each small item. Spare bulbs, glass wipes, 10W30 oil cans. Everything had its place. Helen had once made me label every shelf. When things have a place, your heart does too, she'd said. Yet the one thing irreplaceable, her silver heart, was now somewhere in a stranger's hands by the sea. I bent, opened the safe under the counter, and pulled out a stack of bills thick enough to skip bargaining. Scribbled a note, stuck it on the glass door. Closed for 1 hour, back at 10:30. Jacket, keys. The squeak of the metal door followed. From the kitchen, her voice came. Where are you going? Crescent Bay. Don't forget the Pacific Vista meeting this afternoon. I'll be back. I didn't stop. Some conversations only waste time when the other side never plans to listen. Outside, the rain was fine as salt spray. I turned on the wipers slowly. The tires rolled over the faded white line. The sign, Redwood Station, since 1978, flickered once, then glowed steady. In the rear-view mirror, Amber stood under pump number 2, phone held up to the drizzle, probably captioning coastal vibes. I wasn't angry. The young only see what fits in their frame. They don't know that what holds a home together isn't the roof or the walls. It's the small thing in a tin box that reminds you where home is, even when you've lost your way pretending to be strong. At the turn, I stopped long enough to hear the train horn in the distance. It never came close here. It only reminded I that the tracks still ran somewhere through the woods. I signaled and merged onto the road. Rain tangled on the windshield like threads that wouldn't clear. The pines darkened on both sides, their resin scent sweet and heavy. My left hand on the wheel, my right touched the space on my chest, where Helen's silver heart used to rest each morning. The slope dipped. The town appeared through a thin veil of mist. The open 24 hours sign from the donut shop cast a red light on the road like candy melting in water. A bait shop to the right was half open, its sign, "Crab Season Soon," swinging in the breeze. Crescent Bay always made people believe things could start again, even the worst seasons. My phone buzzed in the cup holder, a text from Lauren. 3 p.m., Pacific Vista. Don't make this hard. I stared at it like an invoice with the wrong total, then set it aside. I'd compromised too many times. Today, I was taking back the one thing that still held me upright. As I turned onto Main Street, the rain thickened. Headlights cut through the water. The red glow of another open 24 hours sign reflected off my hood like a seal of warning. I parked in front of Coastal Pawn and Exchange, killed the engine. In the mirror, I looked a few years older than I had that morning, but my hands were steady, and inside, something long silent had stirred again, the sense of direction. I drew a deep breath. The rain tapped against the tin awning. Then I opened the door, stepped out, and before pushing the shop door open, I said quietly to myself, just as Helen had said when we first hung the station sign, years ago, no rush, but right. Somewhere behind that thin layer of silver, there was something she left for me, and I had arrived in time to hear it. The pawn shop, Coastal Pawn and Exchange, sat right at the corner of Crescent Street and Harbor Avenue. Its old blue sign, trimmed in gold, still glowed even though the rain hadn't stopped. I stepped inside, the doorbell chiming softly. The air was warm and dry, smelling faintly of metal and worn leather. The glass cases were lined with watches, cameras, and a few wedding rings that had lost their partners. Behind the counter stood a small, neatly kept man with silver hair, wiping the glass surface. He looked up when he saw me, offering a tired but kind smile. "You must be Mr. Graham?" "I'm Graham Adler. I called this morning." "Ah, yes, I'm Leo Chen." He extended his hand. His grip was small but firm, still carrying the scent of silver polish. "My condolences about your wife. You were right. This piece is special." He opened a drawer beneath the counter, took out a gray velvet pouch, loosened the drawstring, and carefully placed it on the glass. Through the thin layer of fabric, a faint shimmer of silver caught the light, fragile as a breath. The heart-shaped pendant lay still, cold, and heavy. "Your daughter sold it yesterday. I paid $800, the fair market price, but when I checked it, I found something inside." Leo pulled a small envelope from the drawer, and inside it was a neatly folded slip of paper. He set it in front of me. I didn't read it all, just saw a few lines. I thought, "You should." I opened it. The paper was yellowed, folded in quarters, the handwriting slanted, fine and steady, the kind I'd seen thousands of times on grocery lists, kitchen notes, and birthday cards. Helen's handwriting. There was only one short line. Crescent Bay Credit Union, Box 1427. I stared at the number for a long time. Something inside me shifted, part curiosity, part instinct. Helen never did anything without reason. If she hid this here, it meant something. I carefully opened the pendant. The tiny clasp near the left edge needed a fingernail to pry it open. It clicked softly, metal laughing faintly. Inside was empty, only the scent of aged silver and a trace of fine gray dust. I closed it again, the coolness spreading across my palm. "Mr. Leo," I said quietly, "I'd like to buy it back, whatever it costs." He looked at me, eyes behind thick glasses full of quiet sympathy. "I won't charge interest, Mr. Graham. Just the same 800 I paid your daughter yesterday. I know. Some things are worth more than gold." I nodded, took out 8 crisp bills, and placed them neatly on the counter. He counted quickly, then gently pushed the pouch toward me. "Now it's back where it belongs." I grasped the pouch, my throat tightening. "Thank you. Truly." He gave a small smile. "Keep it safe, my friend. This one isn't for those who don't understand its weight." I nodded again and turned toward the door. The rain had eased, only fine drops clinging to the sign outside. I tightened my hand around the pouch and walked briskly to the truck. Crescent Bay Credit Union stood in the center of town, glass walls rising high, LED letters scrolling across the sign, "Serving our coast since 1955. I parked at the steps, straightened my collar, and went in. The air inside carried the clean scent of pine and air conditioning. Employees in white shirts and blue ties moved efficiently behind the counters. A young woman greeted me with a polite smile. "How can I help you today, sir?" "I need access to a safe deposit box, number 1427. I handed her the small note along with my veteran ID. "My wife was Helen Adler. She passed away. Here's the death certificate." She glanced at the old green ID card, surprised at the words, "Veteran ID, United States Navy." She nodded and said softly, "I'll check the system. Please wait a moment." She returned a few minutes later with an older woman wearing a nameplate that read, "Manager, Linda Cortez." Her tone was calm but firm. "Box 1427 is registered to Mrs. Helen Adler. You are listed as her authorized co-holder. According to our records, it was last accessed in 2019 and hasn't been opened since." 2019, 3 years before Helen's death. My heart sank slightly. "May I see what's inside?" "Of course." They led me downstairs. The steel door opened with 2 keys, one theirs, one mine. When the box slid from the shelf, I found myself holding my breath. It was the length of my forearm, silver gray, with a small scratch at the corner. "You can review it in the private room." I thanked them and stepped inside the small room, just a wooden table, soft yellow light, and the hum of the air conditioner. When the lid lifted open, I sat still for a moment. Inside weren't documents, but cash. Stacks of $100 bills bound with rubber bands, neatly arranged. I made a quick estimate, at least $42,000. Beneath the money lay a thick envelope marked simply, "Graham." My hands trembled as I opened it. The faint scent of old paper and Helen's perfume filled the room, pulling time backward. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I didn't want to leave behind debts or unanswered questions. This money is what I saved from night shifts at the hospital, from all those seasons selling apple jam at the market. Keep the station. Don't sell it, no matter what anyone says. Do you remember the technical map you brought home in 1978? The one with a tiny line in the lower right corner that read, "Lease line, oil sublayer." I was curious once, so I asked Mr. Frederick Shaw, your chief engineer back then. He told me it was true. Beneath the ground of Redwood Station runs a small oil vein, once leased for exploration by Pacific Energy. That lease remains valid until the company renews the entire zone. He also said that if the vein were ever reactivated, the land's value would rise tenfold. I never told you this while I was alive, because I was afraid Tyler would find out. I saw how he looked at things, even at his own father-in-law, as numbers. He would try to take it, and you would be dragged again into the bargaining games of people who don't understand the word keep. Just remember this. Don't let them turn your work into an advertisement. Redwood Station isn't just a gas stop. It's the lifeblood of this region and the place I want you to stay. So when you're tired, there's still a roof with your name on it. Trust me, Graham, that piece of land is the backbone of our family, the thing that will sustain you later on. When Pacific Energy renews the lease, you'll see I was right. I'm no longer here to say it, so I'm writing it down, so that when you read it, you'll know I'm still standing beside you, just beneath that same soil. Don't be afraid of loneliness. Everything I've left behind, from the money to each word, is so you can hold on to yourself. At the bottom was a small signature. Helen. I laid the letter on the table. My heartbeat was slow and steady, but inside, a strange wave rose, part grief, part fury, part the realization that I'd been living in the dark for far too long, without knowing it. Helen had known everything. She had worked night shifts quietly, saved every dollar, and hidden it in the vault. She had seen through the greed of the son-in-law I once called family. I gathered everything and placed it neatly back into the box. When I left the room, I signed the acknowledgement form and thanked the staff. They bowed politely, unaware that I had just stepped out of a fog, the fog of 10 years of misplaced trust. Back in the truck, I sat still. The rain had stopped completely. The bay shimmered silver, waves tapping softly against the stone pier. I opened the pendant again, slipped the small note back inside, closed it, and tucked it into my chest pocket. Helen had left me not just a keepsake, but a key to the truth. I started the engine, looking north, where Highway 101 curved through the pines. There, beneath the soil of Redwood Station, lay the real worth of my life, and the very thing they were after. The wind carried salt through the cracked window. I whispered as if to the person sitting beside me, "I heard you, Helen, and I'll keep your word." The truck rolled out of Crescent Bay, sunlight breaking through the clouds, glinting off the windshield in the same silvery hue as the pendant in my hand. Behind me, the sea was calm, but inside, a tide had begun to rise, slow, deep, and unstoppable. That afternoon, when I returned to Redwood Station, the late sunlight stretched across the damp road in broken streaks. The rain had just stopped, and the air still carried the mingled scent of salt and engine oil. I turned off the ignition, stepped out of the truck, and heard the wind rustling through the old pines behind the station, where Helen once planted 2 small oaks, saying, "So the wind won't be lonely." Today the wind felt colder than usual. The main office door was slightly open. Inside, Lauren's voice rang out, bright and full of energy. "I told you, Tyler, leaving this land idle is a waste. Pacific Vista is expanding the new highway. They'll pay big." I stood on the porch for a moment. The light inside reflected off the window, showing 2 silhouettes, facing each other, my daughter, hair tied up, clutching a thick folder, and Tyler, my son-in-law, in a white shirt with a gold watch, tapping his pen against the table. I pushed the door open. Lauren looked up, surprised for a moment, but quickly composed herself. "You're home earlier than I thought, Dad." "Where did you think I was?" I asked, setting my cap down on the counter. Tyler smirked, stood halfway, and gave a lazy wave. "Hey, Dad, we were just talking business. Sit down, we've got something to show you." I didn't answer, just pulled out a chair. Lauren slid a color-printed map toward me, the stretch of land along Highway 101, with the section marked in yellow, labeled Redwood Station. "Pacific Vista wants to buy out this entire block," she said, her tone like a corporate pitch. "Their offer is $390,000. I think it's the best chance for you to finally rest. You won't have to worry about anything anymore." Tyler chimed in. "With that price, you could buy a nice place by the bay and live easy. I'll handle the negotiations. I know people at Pacific Vista. They'll take care of everything fast. No lawyers needed." I met his eyes. $390,000 sounds like a lot. "Exactly," he said, shrugging. "That rusty gas station costs more to keep running than it brings in. Maintenance, power bills, it's a relic, Dad. Nobody keeps a fossil open these days." Lauren cut in, her tone sharp. "Don't be stubborn, Dad. Do you even realize what this land could become? A shopping plaza, a resort, maybe even a restaurant. Keeping it just drags everyone's future down." Tyler interrupted again, voice clipped, like issuing an order. "No need to think this to death, Dad. We'll handle all the paperwork. You just sign where it says, and we're done. I stayed quiet. They didn't know that in my pocket lay Helen's letter, the voice of someone gone but still sitting beside me, listening to every word. I stood slowly. I need to think about it. Tyler laughed, short and dismissive. What's there to think about? This is your last chance before they pick another site. You're not young enough to keep this place running. Lauren shot him a warning look, then turned to me, trying for calm. Dad, I just want what's best for you. Don't turn this into another fight. I didn't answer. I just picked up my cap and walked out to the porch. The world outside opened wide. The sound of waves carried faintly through the woods, low and heavy. Behind me, Tyler's voice called out, Trust me, Dad. Pacific Vista is the future. You just need to sign. I closed the door, leaving the yellow light spilling across the stained brick wall. That night, Redwood Station was unusually quiet. I sat in the small office behind the counter, the desk lamp casting a warm circle over the old wooden surface. In front of me lay Helen's letter. I opened it again. The paper was soft, the ink slightly blurred, but every word was still clear. Don't let them turn your work into an advertisement. The sentence whispered like a breath beside my ear. I placed my hand on the page, feeling that familiar warmth spread through my palm. Helen had never been wrong about people. She once told me, Tyler talks smooth, but his eyes see land only in dollar signs. Back then I had just laughed. Now every word she wrote was the cold truth. I opened the drawer and took out the old leather notebook I used during my work shifts, the cover embossed with the words, Station Log. On the first page I wrote the first entry in years. June 5th, meeting about land development. Tyler wants me to sell Redwood Station to Pacific Vista for $390,000. Lauren agrees. I've refused for now. Helen foresaw this. I kept writing late into the night, each line steady as the ticking of the wall clock. When I closed the notebook, I knew it wasn't just a record. It was evidence, in case the truth ever needed proving. I poured another cup of coffee, watching the lamplight glint on the window pane. My reflection stared back, older but clearer-eyed than ever. Helen had left a trail, and I had the duty to finish it. Before turning off the lamp, I reached for my phone and opened my contacts. The name Abigail Lang was still there, the attorney for the Northern California Veterans Association who'd helped me with my benefits paperwork last year. I dialed. After 3 rings, a calm female voice answered, Lang Law Office, this is Abigail. Abigail, it's Graham Adler. We met at the veterans meeting in Santa Rosa. Yes, I remember. Mr. Adler, what's going on? I need legal advice about a commercial land deal and possibly how to protect an oil lease beneath a family property. There was a pause, then her tone grew firm. Understood. Come to my office tomorrow morning. Bring every document you have, title deeds, old contracts, anything connected. We'll start from there. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. Thank you. I'll be there. After hanging up, I set the phone down and looked out the window. Outside, the sign glowed red. Redwood Station, since 1978. The reflection shimmered on the puddles below like a silent warning. Nothing was over yet, I whispered almost to myself. Now, Helen, I won't let anyone erase your name from this ground. The wind slipped through the doorframe, carrying the scent of gasoline and sea air. I closed the station log, set it on the desk, and knew that from tonight onward, the counterattack had begun. The next morning, the sky over Humboldt was gray and low, clouds hanging so close it felt like you could reach out and touch them. I drove along the hillside road to a small office on Oak Ridge Street, its wooden sign engraved with the words, Abigail Lang, Veteran Legal Counsel. Inside, the air smelled of fresh coffee and old paper. Abigail sat behind her desk, compact and composed, silver-streaked hair tied in a neat bun. When I stepped in, she looked up with a small smile. You're right on time, like every veteran I've ever met. I've never been late when the fight isn't over, I said, setting my file bag on the table. She motioned for me to sit, opened the bag, and began spreading out the papers I'd brought. The Redwood Station land deed from 1978, photocopies, and several printed emails Lauren had sent. Abigail scanned each sheet, pen in hand, eyes sharp as a scanner beam. After about 5 minutes, she paused and frowned slightly. "Mr. Graham, this part—" I followed her finger. Inside the stack lay a printed PDF of an email, titled Pacific Vista Purchase Authorization, signed via e-sign. At the bottom was my signature, perfectly shaped, the slant and flow unmistakable. But I had never signed it. Abigail looked up quickly. "Your email address is redwoodstationnakedcoastalmail.com, correct?" "Yes," I said. "I use it for oil quotes and shipping invoices." She turned the page back. "Lauren sent this e-sign document to that exact address. In that system, if the recipient doesn't respond within 48 hours, it automatically marks the contract as approved by primary owner. She assumed your silence meant consent." I gripped the edge of the desk, my heartbeat drumming. "She sent it straight to my inbox?" "Yes. This printout came from your documents folder. The metadata shows it originated from Pacific Vista's server." She slid the paper toward me. The title line read clearly, Pacific Vista Purchase Authorization, signed via e-sign. My signature sat beneath Authorized Seller, Graham Adler, identical to the one I'd once used on the original 1978 station registration. She lifted her glasses, studying the ink lines. "This isn't a handwritten original. It's scanned or copied from another document. And here," she tapped the lower corner where a notary stamp should be, "this seal isn't real. It's just a pasted image." My back went cold. "You're saying—" Abigail met my eyes, voice steady and firm. "Someone forged a power of attorney to sell your land. They used an electronic signature platform that doesn't require in-person ID verification. I suspect they pulled your personal data from tax or old bank files." I clenched my hands. "Lauren?" She nodded slightly. "Most likely. She's listed as the successor agent in the altered authorization form. And look here, an email from Lauren.PacificVistaGroup.com, the same domain as Tyler's company." The air thickened. The wall clock ticked. Tick, tick. Like a countdown, Abigail went on. "We need to confirm immediately. If they've filed with the Humboldt County Recorder, the closing could be underway. Another week and Pacific Vista could have the deed in their name." I nodded and stood. "Let's go." 2 hours later, we were inside the Humboldt County Recorder's office, a red brick building where the American flag snapped in the cold wind. Inside, the line of citizens waiting for notary services stretched down the hall. Abigail led me to desk 3, where a young clerk was typing. "Good morning," Abigail said smoothly. "I'm attorney Abigail Long, and this is Mr. Graham Adler, owner of the property known as Redwood Station. We need to check the transfer file number 317HX228. The clerk typed quickly, eyes darting across the screen. "1 moment. Yes. The file was received on May 28th. Submitted by an authorized representative. Name Lauren Adler. It's currently pending closing." Abigail leaned forward. "Show me the signature file and notary attachment." The clerk opened a folder and turned the monitor toward us. My signature glared back under Authorized Seller, Graham Adler. Below it, small print read, Notary attached. But the notary file was just a JPEG, stamped Approved by Virtual Stamp. Abigail's tone hardened. "That's not a legal notarization. Humboldt County doesn't accept Virtual Stamp. It lacks direct ID verification. See, Graham, this is outright fraud." I stared at that forged signature for a long time. The strokes were my own, lifted from the document I'd signed decades ago to register Redwood Station, now twisted into a weapon of betrayal. My fingers pressed the table's edge until my nails bit the wood. Abigail said quietly, "I'll request an immediate 48-hour hold for verification, but you must file a forgery complaint today, before the office issues the title transfer certificate." My voice came out low but firm. Do it. When we stepped outside, the sun had broken through. Its glare bounced off the dusty row of parked cars, scattering light like shattered mirrors. I stood by the curb, holding the photocopy of the forged signature, staring at it. My hands trembled slightly, not with rage, but with clarity. Abigail glanced at me. "You all right?" I took a deep breath, eyes still fixed on the paper. "I'm fine. Now they'll bury themselves, with their own documents." Abigail gave a small, knowing smile. "Good. From here on, we'll use the law to dig their grave." I folded the page and slipped it into the station log notebook. The afternoon light cast my shadow against the red brick wall, small but straight and unmoving. The drive back to Redwood Station was long, the wind sweeping hard across the open fields. One thought stayed with me. Helen had warned me, and I would not let her down. Justice wouldn't need to shout. It would only need one sheet of paper, with the right signature, at the right time. That afternoon, Redwood Station looked as peaceful as ever. A few trucks refueling, the distant horn of a freight train echoing through the pines. But inside, I had replaced its entire soul. After leaving the county recorder's office, I drove to a security equipment store near Eureka. The salesman asked what type I needed. I answered simply, "The kind that's silent, no lights, and records for 7 days." 3 HD cameras were installed by noon, one on the ceiling facing the counter, one in the break room corner, and the last on the wooden beam overlooking the small meeting table where Lauren and Tyler usually discussed their plans. I didn't bother to hide them. This was my commercial property, and the law allowed recording within safety bounds. I only posted a small sign, "Camera in operation." I was no longer the gentle father who listened quietly. I was a combat veteran back on the battlefield. Only this one was silent, and the enemy bore my family name. 2 days later, Lauren called. "Dad, Tyler, and I will drop by to go over the contract. Don't go anywhere, okay?" "The door's open," I said. That afternoon, they arrived. I sat in the back tech room, the camera feed streaming to an old desktop. The audio was so clear I could hear Lauren's heels click on the floor. Tyler opened his laptop, speaking in his usual flat tone. "Just sign this addendum and we're done. Pacific Vista has everything ready." Lauren's voice came softer, barely a whisper, but the mic caught every word. "Once Dad signs, I get my 5% commission. Pacific Vista handles the rest. Don't worry, I've got this." Tyler chuckled, his grin sharp. 5% of 390,000, nearly 20,000, not bad. I stared at their faces on the screen, cold light cutting across their features. No hesitation, no guilt. Betrayal had a sound, and it was clear as breath. I let them talk for 10 more minutes. Then, when they left, I exported the footage and saved it as a file. File name: Evidence Redwood 1.mp4. I replayed it from the beginning, the sound crisp enough to catch Tyler's pen clicking. When Lauren said 5% commission, I paused, rewound, and saved a backup copy, just in case. Night fell. The station was quiet, lit only by the faint yellow glow through the glass. I opened the safe and pulled out an old folder, labeled Accounts 2019-2022. As I flipped through, a credit card statement slipped out. Bold letters read, Maui Airlines, payment $2,800, card ending 3412. I froze. The last 4 digits, 3412, belonged to the secondary card I had issued to Lauren for station supplies. The transaction date, 3 days after the pendant was sold. I tapped the desk lightly. My heart didn't ache anymore. It had gone cold. They had used my own money to go on vacation while I was digging through invoices to keep them at home. I took an envelope, placed the statement and printed video inside, sealed it, and wrote in small black ink, Helen's gift. I wasn't sure why. I wrote that, maybe because everything started with Helen. She had seen their greed long before I did, and now I was just finishing the path she couldn't. I plugged a USB drive into the computer, copying the footage, the statement, the forged power of attorney, and Helen's letter. The progress bar climbed 2%, 37, 79, until the words transfer completed appeared. I removed the drive and placed it in the old tin box that once held her pendant. On the lid, I stuck a label, Helen's gift. I sat there a long time, staring at the oil stains on the floor, each one glinting under the dim light like spent shells. The soldier in me, silent for years, was awake again. I no longer carried a weapon, but I still knew how to build a battlefield. I locked the doors, adjusted the cameras, and switched them to 24-hour mode. In the darkness, Helen's words echoed in my head. "Don't let them turn your work into an advertisement," I whispered back, as if she stood behind me. "Not this time, Helen. This time, I'm the one giving orders." I turned off the lights, leaving only the soft blue blink of the camera monitor, a lone eye watching over a man who no longer believed in promises. And in that light, the real counterattack began. That Humboldt morning lay under a thick veil of mist, the bay's salt air drifting all the way to the ridge, and I sat in the small office of Lang Law Office, a cup of black coffee in my hand, Abigail across from me with a file thicker than 100 pages. She looked at me, voice low and clear. "Mr. Graham, if you want to protect the property without dragging the whole family into litigation, there is a legal, simple, and effective way." I looked up. "What is it?" "Turn them from family into tenants." She paused to let the meaning sink in. When they live on your commercial property without paying, the law treats them as unlawful occupants. With a valid commercial lease, you can evict through civil procedures without the need for personal accusations. It's fast, clean, and leaves no mark on your record. I leaned back and breathed out slowly. I never thought I'd do that to my own daughter. Abigail met my eyes. "I know, but they no longer act like family. They are using your property for their own gain. The law is clear. Someone occupying another's property without payment is a tenant or a trespasser. Which do you choose?" I was silent for a long moment, then nodded. "Draw up the lease." 3 days later, I was back at Redwood Station. Abigail had prepared a commercial rental agreement. The terms were clear. The lessor, Graham Adler, legal owner of the Redwood Station commercial property. The lessees, Lauren Adler and Tyler Crow. Premises, the rear living area of the station, approximately 38 square meters. Rent, $1,200 per month, payable on the first of the month. If overdue, by more than 15 days, the lease terminates automatically, and the right of occupancy ends. Abigail slid the original across to me, eyes sharp and resolute. "Sign here. I'll have a legal assistant deliver it in person, with video recording as proof." I signed, each stroke deliberate, my hand steady. Beneath my signature, I added in black ink, effective immediately. 30 days grace. I wanted to give them a chance, not out of weakness, but because Helen would want me to follow procedure, not let emotion break the law. That afternoon, the sun was odd and bright. I stood on the porch and watched a silver car park in front of the station. A woman in a gray suit stepped out. Deborah Clean, Lang Law Office's legal officer, carrying a sealed envelope and a handheld camera. "Mr. Adler, I will deliver and read the notice," she said softly. I nodded. Lauren opened the door in a robe, coffee in hand. "What is this?" Deborah read aloud. "Notice of commercial lease for Redwood Station pursuant to Section 214 of the California Civil Code. As of today, the tenant is obliged to pay $1,200 per month to the lessor, Mr. Graham Adler." Lauren frowned, voice rising. "You're crazy, Dad. This is my home." I stepped out, voice calm and decisive. "No, Lauren. This is the commercial property, Redwood Station, registered to me since 1978. If you remain here, you are a tenant." "A tenant?" she yelled, scoffing. "You've lost it. You think this will scare me?" Tyler came out, shirt unbuttoned, disdain clear in his tone. You've turned yourself into a joke, Graham. Signing a lease for your own daughter? Should I call a lawyer and report you incompetent? I looked at him cold as a blade. Call if you wish, but before the court rules, you'll have to present evidence that I'm incapable of managing my property. I have documents, video, and counsel to prove otherwise. Abigail had told me to be ready with that line. She knew men like Tyler threatened noise because that is all they had. Lauren kept shouting, You're tearing this family apart. If Mom were alive, she wouldn't forgive you. I answered quietly, each word heavy as stone. If Mom were alive, she would not let you sell the house. She kept her whole life, just for a commission. The room fell silent. Lauren stepped back, flushed. Deborah finished reading the notice, asked them to sign the receipt, then stopped the camera. Papers delivered. I'll file a copy with the county office this afternoon, she said, bowed, and left. That night I sat in my office, the light reflecting off the brass sign, Redwood Station, since 1978. Abigail called, Everything all right? Fine, but they won't stop. I know. I'm arranging a mental competency exam for you, a behavioral and memory assessment. If they file an incompetency petition, we'll have a medical certificate to counter it. The more aggressive they are, the more legal cover we secure. I gave a small laugh. You sure know how to use the law like a scalpel. No, Graham, she said slowly. The law is armor. The knife they hold is their own. I looked up at Helen's photograph on the wall. She smiled in the old wooden frame, her gaze gentle as ever. I whispered, I won't dodge any more, Helen. We'll do this right and fairly. Outside, the wind tugged the open 24-hour sign until it creaked. In that light, I knew. This family had just become two camps. One side keeps its vows. The other is merely tenants nearing the end of their term. That Monday morning, Redwood Station was still, as if no storm had ever touched it. I brewed my coffee and sat before the security monitors in the tech room, reviewing old footage to prepare for handing it over to Abigail. But when I reached June 9th, the third camera feed flickered with a flash of blue from Tyler's laptop, the kind of glow only a technician recognizes as a PDF editing interface. I zoomed in. The screen clearly displayed PDF Editor Pro, and in the upper right corner was the file name, Pacific Vista, POA, draft.pdf. Tyler leaned forward, moved his cursor, and clicked the signature box. A dialog appeared. Insert signature, G. Adler. He used the stylus, drew a few strokes, and pressed Apply. The corner of the screen popped up a small notice. Signature saved successfully. I froze the frame, heartbeat steady, but my eyes cold. There was no doubt left. He had forged my signature right here in this room. The timestamp glared from the screen. 0609, 3:47 p.m. Redwood Station, office, Cam 03. I exported the full clip, saved it to a secure drive, and labeled it Evidence Redwood to MP4. That afternoon, I brought the USB and the station log to Abigail's office. She watched the footage once, then sat silent. When G. Adler appeared on the screen, she looked up, her eyes sharper than steel. We have enough to open a civil case, she said, voice low but firm. This isn't just signature forgery. It's fraudulent conveyance. That carries up to 5 years in prison plus restitution. I asked, how long until filing? Less than 24 hours. I'll submit it directly to the Humboldt Land Court. They'll issue a case number immediately and notify Pacific Vista. I nodded. Do it. Abigail turned to her assistant. Prepare the complaint with the video and forged power of attorney attached. Cite video evidence. Redwood Station, Cam 03, timestamp 3:47 p.m. June 9th. Cause of action, forgery, and attempted unlawful property transfer. The assistant replied, Understood. It'll be filed before 5. I sat quietly as they worked, everything moving with the precision of a military operation. I realized that from today, this war had left the house and entered the court. 2 days later, my phone rang. Lauren's voice trembled for the first time in weeks. "Dad, what did you do? My lawyer says Pacific Vista just got served for fraud." "Yes," I answered simply. "You're dragging an entire company into this? They're ready to negotiate. They'll send someone to settle. Just withdraw the case. They'll pay compensation." I stayed silent for a moment. "They're sending a lawyer?" "Yes, tomorrow. A man named James Blakely, Pacific Vista's counsel," I said slowly, each word deliberate. "Good. I'll meet him. But everything stays public. No closed doors. No money. Only truth." Lauren choked up. "You're destroying yourself." I gave a faint laugh. "No, Lauren. I'm clearing your mother's name." The next morning at 9, Abigail's office was as tense as a wire. Attorney James Blakely, silver hair, gray suit, black briefcase, entered with 2 aides. He began smoothly, his tone diplomatic. "Mr. Adler, Pacific Vista regrets the misunderstanding. We'd prefer to resolve this privately. If you agree to withdraw, the company will issue a $200,000 transfer support payment. No disclosure required." Abigail looked at me. I held Blakely's gaze without blinking. "I don't want money. I want justice. The case is filed. Everything will be public. The video, the fake documents, and every email they sent to my daughter." Blakely arched an eyebrow. "Are you sure? It will cause quite a stir in the press." "Good," I said. "The louder it gets, the clearer it becomes." He paused, closed his briefcase, gave a curt nod, and left. That afternoon, Lauren and Tyler returned to the station. Neither spoke. I sat behind the counter, saying nothing. Tyler tossed a folder onto the table. "You just cost us everything. Pacific pulled the project." I answered evenly. "I only made them stop at the right time. What you lost was something you never should have had." Lauren's eyes welled. "What do you even want from all this?" I looked toward the window, sunlight cutting across the old sign. Redwood Station, since 1978. "I don't want anything," I said quietly. "Just the truth." That night, I opened the station log. Between its thick pages of notes and evidence, I added one last line for the day. "I will not reclaim the money. I will reclaim the truth." I closed the notebook, setting it beside the USB labeled Helen's Gift. Outside, the station lights burned softly against the glass, glowing red like they had in the years when Helen was still alive. I sat still, listening to the waves rolling in from afar, and I knew this fight had left the shadows. Now I was not just the keeper of the gas station, I was the keeper of justice. 3 days after the complaint was filed, the matter spread through town like the smell of gasoline on the wind. Pacific Vista pulled its brokerage team out of Redwood, but it was too late to quash the rumors. The local paper, the Redwood Chronicle, ran a short legal notice. Former gas station owner sues daughter and real estate developer for document forgery. People talked about it in the cafe, at the harbor, even in the repair shop where I still change oil for customers. Some praised me for doing what many parents lack the courage to do. Others said, "Taking your child to court is shooting yourself in the heart." I answered no one. I only knew one thing. Helen believed the truth was always worth paying for. Abigail called, her voice quick and precise, like the snap of a safety pin. "Humboldt County has agreed to open a public hearing. The press may attend. The court has approved a public hearing under the rules for files showing signs of forged property documents." I looked out at the misty sea before the station, where the open 24 hours sign still blinked red in the early morning. "Public is good," I said. "It's time they hear Helen's voice." That morning, Humboldt lay under a thick fog like smoke. In front of the county courthouse, a long line stretched from reporters and townsfolk to a few Pacific Vista employees. The flashlights from the Redwood Chronicle blinked non-stop, while the sign at the door read, "Public Hearing, Case Number 24-CV542, Adler versus Pacific Vista and Lauren Adler." I stood aside, gripping the small silver USB engraved Helen's Gift. In my jacket pocket was the heavy station log packed with evidence, and beside me, Abigail Lang walked steadily, like someone entering a battle she had prepared for all her life. She murmured, just for me, "Today isn't about winning money, Graham. It's about giving her truth back." I nodded. "I know. And I'll speak little. Let the evidence talk." The hearing room on the second floor glared bright under the lights. Every seat was full. The back row was lined with reporters, cameras ready. Judge Marcus Hale, the hard-lined magistrate of Humboldt County, struck his gavel to open the session. Civil case Adler versus Pacific Vista and Lauren Adler. Charge, forged signature and fraudulent property transfer. Are both sides present? Abigail replied, "For the plaintiff, Mr. Graham Adler is present. For the defendants, Pacific Vista and Lauren Adler are present with their attorney, Mr. James Blakely." Judge Hale scanned the room. "This is a public hearing. The press may record as long as they do not disrupt proceedings," the crowd murmured. In the middle row, I saw Lauren with her head bowed, and Tyler beside her, jaw tight, fists clenched. The judge continued. "Plaintiff, proceed." Abigail rose, her voice clear, neither trembling nor loud. "Your Honor, my client, Mr. Graham Adler, is the lawful owner of the commercial property known as Redwood Station. The defendant, specifically his daughter, Lauren Adler, used electronic software to falsify his signature and submit a transfer through an e-signature system, accompanied by a forged notary seal. We have video proof of this act, lawfully recorded on Mr. Adler's commercial premises." The judge nodded. "Present the evidence." Abigail inserted the USB Helen's Gift into the projector. The lights dimmed. The large screen flickered to life, showing crisp footage from inside Redwood Station. On the screen, Lauren leaned over the desk, her voice echoing through the hushed room. "Just fake it. He'll never know. As long as the file says G. Adler, the system will auto-approve." The sound filled the air, cold, real, so sharp the whole room seemed to hold its breath. A faint gasp rose from the back row. The Redwood Chronicle reporter lifted his camera and clicked rapidly. Abigail said, "Video recorded from camera 03, June 9th, 3:47 p.m. Stored as evidence saucerredwood.mp4. The judge watched until the second minute, then turned to the defense. "Mrs. Lauren Adler, would you like to respond to this footage?" Lauren said nothing. Her face had gone pale, her hands gripping the table edge. Tyler leaned in, anger breaking his voice. "This is a private family matter. It shouldn't be public." The judge slammed the gavel, his voice thunderous. "No, Mr. Crow, this is not a family matter. This is civil fraud. When deceit involves property, it belongs to the law, not the dinner table." The courtroom buzzed. An older man whispered from the back, "That's Adler, the Navy veteran. He's taking his own daughter to court." The person beside him murmured back, "No, he's just taking the truth there." Abigail submitted the printed forged power of attorney and verification results from the county recorder's office. The judge skimmed the pages, then pronounced, "The court finds clear evidence of forgery. This case will advance to a full civil trial. Pacific Vista is ordered to suspend all transactions concerning Redwood Station until final judgment." When the gavel struck the final time, Lauren lowered her head, tears falling. Tyler stared at the floor in silence. Reporters' flashes exploded like fireworks. That same afternoon, the Redwood Chronicle headline read, "Veteran exposes real estate fraud by own daughter." The photo captured me standing before the screen, USB in hand, my weathered face calm under the light. Behind me, Lauren bowed her head, while Tyler glared in disbelief. Later that afternoon, I returned to Redwood Station. Passers-by slowed to look. Some nodded in quiet respect. A young woman from the bakery across the street called out, "I read the paper, Mr. Adler. Thank you for standing up for the truth." I only smiled, saying nothing. Inside, I felt both light and hollow. Justice had begun to make a sound. not a shout, but the long sigh of those who'd been silent too long. That night, I opened the station log and wrote the final line for the day. I have stepped into the light. I hide nothing now. They can take the money, the name, but not the truth. I closed the book, placed the USB Helen's gift back into the tin box. Outside, the open 24 hours sign blinked like a promise. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive, not in the shadow of the past, but within the light of justice. 3 days after the hearing, Redwood was no longer quiet. Short news reports played every hour on local radio. Pacific Vista halts all projects in Humboldt County. Forgery lawsuit between veteran Graham Adler and daughter Lauren Adler stirs public debate. Every shop was buzzing with talk. At the cafe across from the station, I overheard fragments like, "He's brave to do it," mixed with, "Still, she's his daughter. Who does that?" I just stayed silent, refueling an old pickup, watching the gasoline flow through the clear hose, then closing the cap. Life went on, even while the storm raged outside. The official notice arrived on Monday morning. Abigail emailed 2 attachments. One, an internal memo from Carson and Lowe Investment Group. Lauren Adler suspended indefinitely pending investigation in civil fraud case. The other, a document from the California Department of Real Estate. Broker license of Tyler Crow revoked. The 2 of them had lost everything they once mistook for power. But I felt no triumph, only a hollow stillness, like the lingering scent of fuel after the wind has died. That afternoon, the Redwood Chronicle released a special edition, Redwood Station, Not for Sale. 70-year-old veteran keeps commercial land, Pacific Vista withdraws after forgery allegations. The photo showed the station in fog, its red, open 24 hours sign glowing over wet pavement. The caption read, "A man choosing to keep what he built with his own hands, rather than let it become a billboard." I thought it would end there, until my phone buzzed that night. A former employee had sent a TikTok link. "Free my mom. 320,000 views." In the clip, my granddaughter Amber sat in her room, perfectly made up, her voice trembling. "My grandpa is destroying our family. He sued my mom over one small mistake, all because of an old piece of land. He forgot she was the one who cared for him for 3 years after my grandma died." Behind her played a mournful tune and a slideshow of family photos, including me and Helen. The comments were split into 2. "Poor girl, that stubborn old man." "No, her mom forged papers. She's the one crying for sympathy." A lesson for anyone who thinks their parents' property is theirs by right. I turned off the phone. No anger, no pain, just fatigue. Crowds always choose the side with tears, never caring where those tears come from. That night, I opened the safe, took out the USB Helen's gift and her letter, and placed them in a white envelope. In the corner, I wrote, "To Veteran Legal Fund, San Francisco, CA." I wanted them to use the materials as a training example for elder fraud, how families exploit and forge in silence. If possible, Redwood Station would stand as a living case study for others. I sealed the envelope and added a line beneath my name, "For those who still believe truth is worth fighting for." Around 10 that night, just as I turned off the office light, there came a knock. 3 hesitant taps, then a muffled sob. I pulled the curtain aside. Lauren stood on the porch, pale, her hair damp with mist, both hands clutching her coat. "Dad?" "Please open the door." I stayed silent. "I'm not here to argue," she said, voice breaking. "I just want to say, I'm sorry. I only wanted you to love me, the way you loved Mom." I leaned my forehead against the door, listening to my daughter's voice tremble on the other side. Something inside me cracked, not in hatred, but in memory. I remembered Helen once saying, "When people lose their way, they'll even lie to themselves." I didn't open the door. Instead, I took a small envelope from the desk, slipped inside Helen's old note. The ink faded, but still legible. Love doesn't need paperwork, only decency. I set it on the floor, nudged it gently through the gap. Lauren picked it up, hands shaking as she read. I heard her sob once, then footsteps fading into the fog. The door clicked shut, and I sat back down, silent for a long time. That night, Redwood was drenched in thin rain. The neon red glow reflected across the puddles in front of the station, flickering like the slow heartbeat of someone who had just survived a storm. I took up the station log and wrote one last line. Sometimes victory isn't when they bow their heads, but when you can stay calm enough not to open the door. Then I closed the book, leaned back in the chair, and looked at the faint light outside, where Helen once stood, smiling softly, saying, "Redwood stays lit, even when someone turns off the light." That morning, the sky over Redwood was crystal clear after a night of rain. The early sunlight reflected off the damp asphalt, scattering metallic flashes across the street. In front of the Humboldt County Land Court, a line of people stretched down the steps. Reporters from the Redwood Chronicle, Channel 7 local news, and regional stations filled the area. On the courthouse terrace, a large board with the court's logo displayed the words, "Public Civil Hearing, the People versus Tyler Crow and Lauren Adler, Redwood Station Case." I stood at the bottom of the stairs in a gray suit and black tie, holding the station log and the USB labeled Helen's Gift. Abigail Lang stepped beside me, her dark coat sharp against the morning light, her face firm yet calm. She whispered, "This is the main hearing, Graham. Today we don't need a closed room. We need light." I nodded. Helen once said, "Light doesn't ask who deserves it. It just shines where it's needed." The courtroom was spacious, white-walled, with a high ceiling and a press section already packed. Cameras pointed at the judge's bench. When the gavel struck, the whispers ceased. "The hearing for the Redwood Station document forgery and property transfer case is now in session," Judge Margaret Stone announced clearly. Plaintiff, Graham Adler, represented by attorney Abigail Lang. Defendants, Lauren Adler and Tyler Crow, represented by a public defender after Pacific Vista, withdrew all sponsorship. Abigail stepped forward, placing a thick file on the evidence table. "Your Honor, today we present all evidence proving the acts of signature forgery, financial abuse, and deliberate misappropriation of my client's property. These are the verified documents, videos, and records." The central screen lit up. The first video showed Tyler opening a PDF editor and inserting the signature, G. Adler. The room froze. Then came another clip, Lauren's voice saying, "Just fake it. He'll never know." Judge Stone frowned and tapped her pen lightly on the file. "The footage is clear and unaltered. The court accepts this as valid evidence." Abigail continued, presenting an official appraisal from the Department of Resources estimating the Redwood Station property at $1,250,000, given its subsurface oil lease rights. She said, "The victim, Mr. Graham Adler, lost not only material property, but also his honor, the very legacy his late wife, Mrs. Helen Adler, entrusted to him in a letter. With the court's permission, I will read a portion." The room fell silent. Abigail opened the envelope and read slowly, "If you are reading this, it means I'm gone. Keep the station. Don't sell it, because it sits on land with an oil lease. Don't let them turn your work into a billboard." Her voice caught at the last line. Across the aisle, Lauren's head bowed low, hands trembling on the table's edge. Tyler stared blankly at the floor. Abigail set the letter down and said firmly, "This is moral evidence, and sometimes justice must be guided by morality before it is measured by law." Judge Stone reviewed the documents and then nodded. "Ms. Lauren Adler, Mr. Tyler Crow, the court finds sufficient evidence of forgery and financial exploitation." She paused, her tone solemn yet steady. "Under Section 484B of the California Civil Code, I hereby declare ownership of the Redwood Station commercial property and all related assets is restored to Mr. Graham Adler. All contracts, authorizations, or documents containing forged signatures are null and void. The gavel struck sharply, echoing through the chamber. In that instant, I heard myself exhale, a quiet release, like a knot that had tightened for 2 years finally coming undone. Lauren burst into tears under the glare of the cameras. The click of shutters filled the air. A reporter whispered, "That shot's going on the front page." Tyler stood frozen, his face like stone. An officer approached and rested a hand on his shoulder. "Mr. Tyler Crow, you are charged with forgery and financial exploitation. The court grants probation for 3 years with full restitution of legal costs." Abigail turned to me, nodding softly. "It's over, Graham." Stepping outside, I was met by brilliant noonlight. Reporters crowded close, microphones thrust forward. One asked, "Mr. Adler, how do you feel about reclaiming property from your own family?" I answered simply, "I didn't reclaim property. I kept a promise to my wife." That afternoon, the Redwood Chronicle ran bold headlines. "Veteran restores his honor through late wife's letter." Bate, court declares Graham Adler, legal owner of Redwood Station, Pacific Vista, permanently withdraws from Humboldt County. The cover photo showed me in the courtroom, Helen's letter projected behind me, the words, "Redwood Station since 1978, reflected in the glass. In the corner, the sub-headline read, "One letter, one truth, one kept promise." That night, I returned to the station. On the table lay the fresh newspaper, Helen's smiling photo beside the headline. I rested my hand on it, as if touching hers from years ago. Outside the window, the neon red glow shimmered across the wet ground like light on dark water. I whispered, "We did it, Helen. Redwood still stands, and so does your honor." The wind from the bay carried salt and gasoline, blending into the most familiar scent of my life. In that silence, I felt it clearly. Justice isn't an explosion. It's the quiet light that reaches the darkest place. 1 month after the trial, Redwood Station still glowed, as if no storm had ever passed. But inside, everything was different. No more arguments, no more unfamiliar hands touching the cash drawer or tapping on my computer. Each morning, I still brewed coffee, checked the pumps, and wiped the "Open 24 hours" sign. But this time, I did it with the calm of a man who had fulfilled a promise. That afternoon, Abigail brought a sealed envelope containing a purchase contract from the Coastal Veteran Cooperative, a local organization founded by former servicemen to support those no longer able to work. Offer price, $450,000, all in cash. They want to keep the Redwood Station sign and your small office as a community landmark, she said, her eyes softer than usual. I smiled. They chose the right people to carry it on. Helen would agree. I signed slowly, steadily, without trembling. As I folded the contract, I knew I had just placed the period at the end of the longest chapter of my life and opened another. A week later, at the station, the handover ceremony was simple but warm. A banner hung beneath the roof. Redwood Station, now part of the Coastal Veteran Cooperative. Below it stood a wooden table covered with a white cloth and a vase of lilies, Helen's favorite flower. Local officials, a few reporters, and veteran friends from Eureka, Fortuna, and Crescent Bay attended. The local station set up cameras for a live broadcast. There was no loud music, only the distant sound of waves and wind through the pines. I stood at the microphone holding a large check for $100,000, inscribed, "Helen Adler Memorial Fund for Veterans' Wives in Need." "This fund," I said, "is for the women who stood behind men like us, the ones who carried the world without ever complaining. Helen used to say, 'The one who keeps the home also keeps the honor.' I'm just finishing her work." Applause spread through the crowd, soft at first, then steady. A photographer from the Redwood Chronicle snapped what would become the front page photo. "Veteran sells gas station, creates fund for soldiers' wives." Among the crowd, I saw Lauren standing at a distance beside a gray SUV. She didn't speak or move closer. No one recognized her, or perhaps they pretended not to. I caught her eyes just for a second, a look of both shame and regret. I nodded slightly as if to say, "Keep living." She lowered her head and turned away. No tears, no apology. Maybe silence was her way of admitting fault. The ceremony ended as the sunset spread across Humboldt Bay. I stood beside the new bronze plaque, gleaming in the light. Redwood Station, operated by Coastal Veteran Cooperative. Beneath it, a smaller line was etched deep. Dedicated in memory of Helen Adler, 1949 to 2022. I ran my fingers over the cool metal. In that moment, I thought I heard Helen's voice in the wind. "You did right, Graham." I turned to see the veterans, the reporters, and the townspeople packing up. A reporter asked, "Do you have any final words?" I took the microphone, looked up at the sign glowing red in the fading sun, and said slowly, clearly, "Some things only need silence to be loud enough for a lifetime." The crowd fell quiet for a few seconds, then clapped. No one said another word. That night, I returned to my small house by the bay, opened the window, and let the breeze carry the mingled scent of salt and gasoline, the smell I had lived with for more than 40 years. On the table sat a photo of Helen smiling beside a photocopy of the fund check. I lit a small candle, letting the glow dance across her frame, and whispered, "Redwood still shines, Helen, and your name has become part of that light." Outside, the distant sea beat steadily. The lights of the Coastal Veteran Cooperative flickered on for the first time. Red, just like the old "Open 24 hours" sign. This time it didn't call for customers. It called for memory. I know some will ask, "Do you regret pushing your daughter away?" The answer is no, because I didn't push anyone. I just stood still and let the truth choose where it wanted to stay. Redwood Station no longer belongs to me, but it still shines, serving those who respect hard work and kindness. Helen once said, "A home isn't built from bricks, but from the character of those who live in it." Now I understand. I don't need to keep the walls, only the vow. If you're reading this and have ever been hurt by your own family, if you've ever had to choose between love and what's right, remember this. Justice isn't the sound of shouting. It's the moment you stay upright and refuse to do wrong, even when no one stands with you. Cherish the good people around you, because sometimes they're the reason a small light can burn for a lifetime. If you believe truth and kindness are still worth protecting, leave a single dot in the comments, so I'll know there are still people like you keeping their own light alive. And don't forget to subscribe, because every week I'll share another story where silence is the weapon and dignity is the final victory.